Anatomy of a scene, the greatest 5 minutes in cinema history. Welcome to this explainer. If you love geeking out over how masterful structure and subtle choices create absolutely unforgettable moments, well, you're in the exact right place. Today, we're setting the stage for a deep, analytical deconstruction of that legendary diner scene in the 1995 cinematic masterpiece Heat. We're going to break down exactly how a single conversation literally rewired the DNA of modern crime thrillers. And we're going to do it step by step. So let's get into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. It all kicks off with this famously disarming line, "What do you say I buy you a cup of coffee?" It's spoken by an obsessed LAPD detective to a highly disciplined master thief. You know, for the entire first half of the film, these two forces of nature have been circling each other, right? Tracking one another, hunting one another, but they never actually meet. Until, halfway through the story, a police cruiser pulls over a stolen Cadillac. The detective gets out, walks right up to the thief's window, and instead of drawing his weapon, he just asks this simple question. It marks their very first, totally inevitable collision on screen.
To really wrap our heads around the immense cultural and meta context here, we've got to talk about the actors inhabiting these two roles. On one side, representing our frantic, rumpled detective Vincent Hanna, we have Al Pacino. And on the other, playing our meticulously dressed thief, Neil McCauley, is Robert De Niro. Back in 1995, these guys were the absolute, undisputed kings of American crime cinema. I mean, they defined an entire generation of film. Yet, unbelievably, they had never shared a single frame of screen time together until this exact moment. Director Michael Mann took that massive cultural weight and channeled it to build an unbearable cinematic tension. Act 2, Neutral Ground, the Beverly Hills Summit. Here, we transition from a high-stakes, high-speed cat-and-mouse hunt on the dangerous streets of LA to the remarkably quiet interior of Kate Mantilini's diner in Beverly Hills. The pacing completely shifts gears. We're no longer in a frantic chase. We've officially arrived at a summit meeting. So what do we mean by neutral ground? It's an environment completely devoid of physical action, weapons, or raised voices. Notice how director Michael Mann completely strips away all the traditional action movie tropes. There are zero weapons on the table, no yelling, no immediate threats of physical violence. The background noise is literally reduced to just the soft hum of clinking coffee cups and the low murmurs of oblivious patrons sitting around them. By stripping away that physical action, Mann replaces it with the suffocating psychological tension.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how these stripped-down cinematic choices force us to focus entirely on this summit meeting between two rival kings. Mann doesn't use any flashy camera work. Instead, he relies on standard over-the-shoulder shots. Why? Because he wants your singular focus on their faces, their eyes, and the terrifyingly calm delivery of their dialogue. These techniques ensure we realize this isn't some standard police interrogation, it's a high-level summit where two rivals are finally sizing each other up face to face.
Act 3, The Mirror Effect. As the coffee is poured, we enter the core psychological theme of our explainer today. Because you see, underneath the badges and the lockpicks, these two unstoppable opposing forces are actually exact mirrors of one another. Just look at the stark contrast between these two men. On one hand, Hanna complains about his failing marriages and his total inability to maintain a normal life. He is, by his own admission, a pretty terrible husband. On the other hand, McCauley is profoundly lonely, living a life completely dictated by a rigid survival code. Both of these guys are entirely hollow outside of their demanding, all-consuming professions. And honestly, the heartbreaking irony of this whole scene is that under any other circumstances in any other life, they'd probably be best friends. They are quite literally the only two people in Los Angeles who truly understand each other.
This brings us to McCauley's guiding philosophy, which he shares with Hanna. Do not have any attachments. Do not have anything in your life you cannot walk out on in 30 seconds flat if you spot the heat around the corner. It's a rigid, deeply isolating code. When he says this, you can just feel the absolute tragedy of these two men. They're sitting there acknowledging their shared emptiness over a cup of coffee, finding a bizarre, momentary comfort in each other's total isolation.
Act 4, The Lethal Ultimatum. Obviously, that comfort cannot last. As we move into the climax of the conversation, the tone takes a dramatic shift. That mutual respect and brief intimacy we just explored slowly, but inevitably, morphs into a lethal promise. And this brilliantly illustrates the stark dividing line between them, duty on one side and discipline on the other. Hanna looks McCauley dead in the eye and states with absolute clarity that if he's forced to choose between letting McCauley escape to hurt other people or killing him, he will not hesitate to pull the trigger. He respects the thief, for sure, but his duty will always win out.
McCauley doesn't blink.
He delivers this chilling, unblinking response. There's a flip side to that coin. What if you do got me boxed in? And I gotta put you down, because no matter what, you will not get in my way. Okay, I'm just gonna pause for a second here to let the sheer weight and finality of those words really sink in for you. What we're witnessing here is a collision course built on facts, not anger. Neither man is threatening the other out of malice or hatred. There's zero bravado here. They are simply stating the immovable facts of their reality. They're locked onto a fatal trajectory, and despite the profound mutual respect they've just uncovered, neither of them knows how to steer away from it.
Act 5, the tragic aftermath. Which brings us to the conclusion of the scene. They don't fight. They simply shake hands, and they walk out. The encounter in the diner is officially over. But I want to emphasize to you that the true impact of this quiet summit is really just beginning.
Picture the neon-lit grid of Los Angeles streets at night, with two red dots moving rapidly in opposite directions. Once they leave that neutral ground, every single bullet fired, every frantic chase through the city, and every drop of blood spilled for the remainder of the film carries the heavy, inescapable weight of this single, quiet conversation. We as the audience now know exactly what's at stake and exactly why neither man can ever back down.
So the crucial point is how this sets up the inevitable escalation. Step 1, their mutual refusal to break personal rules. Step 2, this directly leads to the film's famous, deafening bank robbery shootout. It isn't just a generic action sequence anymore, it's the tragic, inevitable result of two titans who absolutely refuse to compromise their identities. And step 3, by doing this, Michael Mann literally changed the grammar of the crime thriller forever. He proved that emotional stakes make physical action exponentially more impactful.
We'll wrap up our explainer today with a question for you to really reflect on. Can the most explosive cinematic encounter happen with just 2 cups of coffee and the truth? By relying entirely on subtext, masterful dialogue, and the sheer presence of 2 legends simply talking to one another, Heat answered that question with a resounding yes. It's a perfect reminder that sometimes the loudest moments in storytelling are the ones spoken at an absolute whisper.